By Robert Rankin from the University of Kansas. It's called The âThe Language of Louisiana, Philological Recovery of Grammar and Typology. And I'm sure there's a handout.
There is a handout in there. I kept a secret stash just in case.
Can I have a secret one?
As for the handout, I suggest that those of you who don't know anything about Siouan languages at this point, not try to follow along word for word and line for line. That just sort of obscures the forest and presents you with a lot of trees. I suggest maybe you just keep the handout with you and sit back and listen. And this is really kind of an exercise in how much you can learn from a reasonably short word list of a now extinct language, how much grammar you can go through and pick out of it, sort of with a nut pick. The noted Smithsonian ethnographer John R. Swanton, while visiting the remnant of the Tunica tribe in Marksville, Louisiana in 1908, encountered a single speaker of the âThe language, a language earlier thought to have been Muscovian in affiliation because of the presence of the consonant F in the tribal name and also in the word for possum, which Swanton had learned a year earlier. Upon eliciting some basic vocabulary, Swanton was surprised to discover that âThe was actually Siouan and ultimately related to Dakota Sioux and the other related languages of the northern plains. He collected and published a vocabulary of 613 entries containing a few phrases, conjugated forms, possessed forms, that sort of thing, and these represent all that we have of the âThe language. On your handout, I've used my phonemicization of âThe in the various charts that I include, while in most of the example forms, sentences, and so forth, I've retained Swanton's original notation. And a chart of the phonemes is there on page 1. All vowels except schwa may occur either long or short, and all vowels without exception may occur accented or unaccented. We won't have time to discuss phonology further here, and for our purposes, the only symbols in Swanton's notation that you'll need explanation of are the number 2 on the handout. The letter C was earlier used by Americanists for the palato-alveolar sh, voiceless fricative, and then DJ and TC were used for j and ch, allophones of the single palato-alveolar affricate phoneme. Number 3 on the handout, Siouan languages are primarily head-marking, active stative, SOV languages of moderate morphological complexity. Edward Sapir, in his book Language, characterized Dakota Sioux as, quote, complex pure relational, unquote, in basic type, with derivational concepts signaled by agglutinating elements and pure relational concepts, for which read pronominals, somewhat fused. Dakota's overall morphological technique he characterized as agglutinated fusion, with a degree of synthesis as synthetic to mildly polysynthetic. Siouan languages are among those considered by many linguists today to be pronominal argument languages, which is to say that the pronominal prefixes on the verb are considered to be the arguments of that verb, not just agreement markers for external noun phrases. If they are considered to be agreement markers, then Siouan languages are triple agreement languages. âThe appears to possess the vast majority of these characteristics originally cited for Dakota by Sapir, minus perhaps noun incorporation and an active stative split. âThe lexical classes include nouns, verbs, pronouns, postpositions, particles, and probably adverbs, not adjectives. Verbs are inflected for person, number, aspect, and mode, generally not tense. And there's also typically prefixal morphology for location, direction, and instrument. A careful philological and comparative analysis of Swanton's âThe data allows us to identify virtually all of these features. As befits a head-marking language, âThe nouns are relatively uninflected. They do inflect for possession, but ôthe shows no sign of the indefinite or definite articles found in other Siouan languages, and like them, it lacks overt number marking on nouns. A plural suffix on the noun signals plurality of a possessor, not of the noun. Siouan noun possession normally divides nouns into what are conventionally called inalienable nouns, all of which require a possessive patient prefix, and alienable nouns, for which possession is most often accomplished by the use of an external possessive base, âthe, that precedes or follows the noun and attracts the possessive prefixes. In Proto-Siouan, the inalienable nouns clearly included most kinship terms and body parts. There is evidence for at least two kinds of possession in ôthe, but body parts at least can't be signed a possessive class or possession class semantically. There are two basic lexically determined sets of prefixes, possessive prefixes, both with phonological variants, number 4 on the handout. The first two columns on the chart under number 4 are identical with reflexes of the subject prefixes that go on active verbs. In ôthe, they appear to mark many body parts along with alienables. The last column is identical with the reflexes of transitive object prefixes on verbs. And as possessives, they are prefixed to inalienable nouns across Siouan, or to the alienable possessive base ôthe, âthe, or âthe. Most members of this class are nuclear family terms. Examples of the various classes follow. A fairly large number of them. We won't have time to go through them, and I want to skip down now to number 8, I think, on the handout. Possession of a noun by another noun involves juxtaposition and the usual inalienable prefix set if the possessed noun is inalienable. So you have my sister's husband, and you can see the prefix there, also someone's hand. Alienable nouns are simply juxtaposed, but the few examples we have, flour and rice, literally white men's flour and white men's corn, may actually be noun-noun compounds rather than true possessive constructions.